Good evening. I would like to call to order our April the 4th, 2022 meeting of Pickens County Council to order. I want to thank everybody for being here with us tonight as we do the business of the county. At this time, I'm going to recognize Vice Chairman Costner to lead us in our invocation.
Please join me in prayer. Most gracious and Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for the blessings that you give each and every one of us. And as we enter into this time before a celebration of a resurrection, help us to be mindful that you sent your Son to die on the cross to save us from our sins, to make a way for each of us through the resurrection for all those who believe. And dear Lord, we just want to continue to pray that this council keeps your will at the center of everything that we do. And we want to continue to pray for our leaders, both in state government and federal government, and for those that are serving, our men and women, both at home and abroad. Keep them safe and bring them back home to us again. For we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
In a way of honoring and recognizing the service in our veterans here in Pickens County, we've adopted a program where we ask a veteran to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm going to ask Mr. Raymond D. Etheridge, if he would, please lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Raymond D. Etheridge was in the U.S. Navy from January the 24th of 1966 to February 28 of 2006. Construction mechanic first class Etheridge originally joined the United States Navy on January 24th. He attended 12 weeks of boot camp at Naval Training Center, San Diego, California, and graduated in April of '66. He received orders, brother duty, to the USS Hanson DD-832, completing 3 West Pac tours of duty in Southeast Asia, Vietnam. In December of '68, Mr. Etheridge volunteered for special warfare training, Mare Island, California. He completed 11 weeks of specialized training to include weapons, demolition and survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. In March of '69 to March of '70, he was attached to the Riveron 13, River Division 132 as boat coxswain, and then promoted to boat captain of armored troop carrier Tango 26. He survived 220 combat patrols and 36 times engaged with the enemy. He was honorably discharged in March of 1970. He re-enlisted in June of '70 and received orders to the USS Cunningham, DDG-17, home based in Norfolk, Virginia. He departed for the Med cruise to Europe for 9 months in '71. In '72, Etheridge went on shore duty with Fleet Maintenance Assistance Group aboard the USS Sierra 8018. In November of '74, he was advanced to boatswain's mate first class and took orders to the USS Navasota. Close enough? AO 106. He served until November of '75 and participated in decommissioning ceremony. Etheridge then reported aboard the USS Deliverer, ARS-23 in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. He received an honorable discharge in February of '77. In '94, Raymond Etheridge rejoined the Naval Reserve as a construction mechanic, second class, in the Seabees, serving with NMCB 24 and NMCB 74. On December of 1996, he was recalled to active duty in recruiting belay at Navy and Marine Corps Reserve Center, Greenville, South Carolina. He was promoted back to Petty Officer First Class in December of '99. In August of 2002, he was transferred to Asheville, North Carolina, as recruiter in charge for Naval Reserve Center. Etheridge completed 24 years of service and also had completed all the requirements for Chief Petty Officer, making the selection boards for 5 years. Petty Officer First Class Etheridge awards and medals include Purple Heart 2, Navy Commendation with V for Valor, Navy Achievement Medal 3, Combat Action Ribbon, Navy Presidential Unit Citation 1969 to 1970, Navy Unit Commendation 1969-1970, Navy Battle E Ribbon 5, Navy Good Conduct Medal 4, National Defense Ribbon 2, Vietnam Service Medal 3, Global War on Terrorism, Outstanding Volunteer Service Medal, Navy Sea Service Ribbon, Navy Overseas Ribbon, Navy Recruiting Service 3, Vietnam Gallantry Cross, Republic of Vietnam Campaign, Navy Rifle Expert, and Navy Pistol Expert. Veteran Raymond D. Etheridge served his country honorably, and today we show him appreciation. Thank you for your service. As a small token, I would like to present you with a certificate for being here and for your service. Thank you for serving our country. Thank you for serving Pickens County. Thank you. Yes, sir. Next up on tonight's agenda is public forum. Madam Clerk, if you would please call our first speaker.
Mr. Chairman and members of council, I call Donna Clayton.
Good evening. Early in March, I had the occasion to use the EMS services for Pickens County, and I live in Clemson, so at the time they came to my house, I asked to be transported to St. Francis in Greenville, and we were told that they said, we are owned by Prisma. Well, I've since found out that isn't true, so I don't know why I was told that. But I was told that my choice of transport was either Easley Baptist or to Pickens, and I chose Easley Baptist. Now, I don't know who transported me from Easley to Prisma in Greenville, but I was transported that same night, and I assumed it was Pickens County EMS, but quite frankly, I'm confused about that. After I spoke with their administrator today, and he seems to think I was transported by a Prisma vehicle, but I don't know that for a fact. My concern is that we need to be taken where we're familiar, where our doctors are, where our records are, our insurance, all of our personal medical data. And another question I have is Pickens County EMS allowed to go out of county? I don't know that. I don't have an answer for that. Maybe you folks can find an answer for that. But I'm pleased with the manner in which I was taken care of. That's not an issue here at all. I'm pleased with that, and I have stressed that with the administrator. But my question is, can they go out of county? And if they could take me to Prisma, why couldn't they take me another mile down the road to St. Francis? You know, was it a Prisma vehicle that took me? I don't know. I don't have an answer. So that's my concern, and if you folks oversee the Pickens County EMS, maybe you can help me come to some sort of conclusion that would not only help me, but other people, because we in Clemson are sort of in a little cocoon. We have choices. We could go to Easley, we could go to ANMED, we could go to Greenville, to Prisma, we can go to St. Francis, even Oconee if we so choose. We're sort of in that little 25-mile circle, you know. So I don't know what the parameters are and what we should expect as people who might one day need the EMS. But once again, let me state completely and fully, I have no problem with the treatment I received from the EMS. It was very good and very professional.
Thank you, and we'll follow up with the administrator and get some answers for you on that.
Okay, now I spoke with the administrator today, and he's aware that I was...
Mr. Roper, we'll follow up with Mr. Roper. Thank you.
Are you Mr. Roper?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
That's 3 minutes. That's our time limit. I'm not trying to be rude at all. I'm not. But
Thank you,
Mr. Roper will get you answers. I will assure you.
Brian Geswhite.
How you folks doing? I was here last month. I brought to your attention the alabaster house drug rehab facility that was put in place in my neighborhood. Some of the concerns I brought up last month was safety of our community and everything. Well, 15 days after I spoke to you, we had an arrest at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday night into Thursday morning. I have the police report right here. I've called everybody I can call. I've talked to Chris Brink for building codes and stuff like that to see if there was any, they've been doing work on that house. They've made adjustments. He said he was supposed to go and check on building codes, see if they were out of violation. I never heard anything back. I talked to DHEC, the Bureau of Health Facility Licensing, to see if they needed a license to put such a facility in my neighborhood. Didn't really get any answers there. I spoke to Mr. Wilson. We had a bit of a discussion. He told me that I was going to speak to Mr. Roper. Mr. Roper was supposed to get fire code enforcement to go check out the place. I'm not sure. I didn't talk to you since the day I talked to you to see if that happened or anything. I'm kind of at the end of my rope. Everyone just keeps saying, well, you got to talk to them and you got to talk to them. So, and it basically comes down to there's no codes or zoning ordinances in Pickens County against such a thing. And my question to you is, what steps do I need to take to start the process of having some kind of an ordinance against this sort of thing? So even if I can't get it out of my neighborhood, none of these folks will have to deal with it in their neighborhood. That's all the time I need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Rogers.
Good evening. I just wanted to introduce myself. I have put in an application to be appointed to the Zoning Boards of Appeals, and my name's Ken Rogers. I've been a citizen of Pickens County since 2008, and I just wanted you guys to have a face and a name put together. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Margaret Thompson.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring everybody up to date on progress of Clemson Paul Partners, and it's busy, real busy. But first I wanted to present a check for the Pickens County Animal Shelter for $800. Last month, Phi Gamma Delta or something, it was one of those fraternities down at Clemson. They did a puppy run, and so we got to pick the organizations we wanted to come. So it was Pickens County Animal Shelter, Anderson County Paws, Labor of Love Rescue, and Concerned Citizens for Animals. Well, they came and they brought animals. Well, they ended up raising over $4,000, and they did it in such a short time. But long story short, we decided to split up the proceeds with those organizations. So, Mr. Roper, you'll get a check for the animal shelter for $800. Spay and neuter's been really, really busy. We had a guest vet to come in last week to help Dr. Kate. We've got a guest vet coming in tomorrow from Charleston that Mr. Costner has talked to. They are volunteering their time, thank goodness, because payroll's not cheap. We're still not paying ourselves. We don't intend to pay ourselves. The volunteers have been wonderful. They wash towels. They watch the animals while they come out of surgery, make sure they're still breathing and everything like that. Surgeries tomorrow. We only do it 1 day a week. But if y'all would like to come, you're welcome to come. Mr. Roper, you need to see how busy it is. But once again, thank you for doing this for Pickens County, because it's been a huge success. In fact, Oconee Humane Society called me about a month ago and said, I'll tell you this, but don't say anything, but we're getting ready to get spay and neuter. So they're going to build a facility on their over at their Humane Society. They're going to have to raise funds to do it, but they're going to start spay and neuter. The difference between them and us is they're only going to do feral cats. So that's all they're going to do, and we do everything. We've even microchipped a rabbit, but named Inky. So, and it's just a wonderful feeling to knowing that you're helping people that don't have a lot of money, and they just love their animals. And this is one of the best things, and it makes me proud because now other people are looking at us as an example. So it just really makes me proud, and I thank y'all for that.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Jessica Morell.
The 3-minute timer has me nervous because I could talk about this all night. I'm going to talk about the Stockade Jail and ask you to please vote no to this. Just like this gentleman is dealing with this homeless shelter in his community, I'm dealing with the Pickens County Shelter of Hope homeless shelter in my community. I live on the same road that this homeless shelter is on. It butts up against the city. These people are not regulated. There's no structure put in place at this homeless shelter. There's no vocational services, no job training, no mental health services, nothing for them. They go out, they have to be out at a certain time in the morning, and they have to be in at a certain time at night. And so during that time throughout the day, they are roaming the streets in the city. If you go and ask any business owner down Main Street or even Market at the Mill how they are faring with the homeless community, they will give you an earful. I've had my house broken into, my car's broken into, I've had people sleeping on my porch, I've had drug use in front of my house on a daily basis. I have a 7-year-old son, and you know, I've lived in that house for 4 years. They moved in there about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. The homeless shelter did. The city of Pickens has the smallest police station in the county. They have 14 officers. Most of the time, they only have 1 to 2 officers on duty. Sometimes the officer on duty is the chief of police, and so you're trying to put another homeless shelter 3.6 miles from the center of the city. There are no jobs to support this. We do not have the infrastructure in our county to support this and the services that these types of people will need. We don't know what the types of people that are coming to this homeless shelter are, but we know what the types of people that will be coming from the jail. Like, I mean, they're known criminals, and they're not only criminals that just our local community has arrested. The jail houses people from the state prison. And so, I mean, do we want to invite pedophiles into our neighborhood? I can't fathom saying yes to this, especially when a pastor is coming to you wanting to do it, because this takes a lot of education and knowledge to put the right program in place to even support or help these types of people.
Thank you.
Amber Lange.
Good evening. My name is Greta Buford. How y'all doing? I am here on behalf of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the Anderson Alumni Chapter. And so I'm going to read a letter to make my time go a little quicker. It's easier that way. So dear County Council members, the Anderson Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated would like to thank you for your service as an elected official. We are a private, not-for-profit organization whose purpose is to provide assistance and support through established programs in local communities throughout the world. Since its founding, more than 330,000 women have joined the organization. The organization is a sisterhood of predominantly African-American college-educated women. The Anderson Alumni Chapter was started on May 19th, 1978, and has served Anderson, Oconee, and Pickens counties for over 43 years. Some of the programs we have sponsored include feeding the homeless and or needy, providing collegiate scholarships, holding voter registration drives, and hosting educational forums that deal with the issues of human trafficking, health awareness, and domestic violence. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is also a nonpartisan entity and does not endorse candidates for election. We would like to take this opportunity to highlight just a few issues that we hope you will make a priority during your legislative sessions. Voter rights. In the past years, South Carolina has recently enacted new voting restrictions. We hope you understand the importance of educating the community on these new laws so citizens who are the most impacted, like our elderly or our minoritized folks, are not discouraged from voting. Racial profiling by law enforcement. The profound racial disparities in arrests and convictions in South Carolina are a symptom of this county's many generations of social and economic discrimination based on race. We hope you are talking to your constituents of color about their experiences with law enforcement and supporting legislation that will hold police officers accountable. Domestic violence. South Carolina has been ranked as one of the worst in the nation for deadly violence against women for numerous years. We hope you are supporting legislation that is specifically combating this statewide issue. Education. Unfortunately, it is common knowledge that South Carolina's rural schools have not received adequate resources to educate their students. It is our hope that you are diligently working on solutions to this problem. We have our contact information there, and on behalf of the Social Action co-chairs, Amber Lang and Alicia Smith, we thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Buford.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of council, this concludes the public forum.
Next on tonight's agenda is approval of minutes from March the 7th and March 21st special called meeting. I'll ask for a motion to approve these minutes.
Motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Feimster. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman Costner. Discussion on the minutes. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Fourth on tonight's agenda is Administrator's Report. Mr. Roper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to address council and update you on a few things that we have going on in the county at this time. The first thing I would want to talk about tonight is just a couple of event announcements. One is, and you may have seen where the public has gotten a little ahead of us because of some signage that went up this past week. The Scoop Ice Cream Shop, which is located on the property of the Pickens County Airport across from our new handicap accessible playground, has done a soft open. And because of that, I don't know if you saw it, but on social media, there was a little bit of a firestorm about people wanting that they didn't know this park had been here and they'd lived in Liberty for 20 years and things like that. The park has not even officially been dedicated yet, but we've got a good groundswell of support. So we're looking at that at that official opening on Tuesday, April the 12th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to officially dedicate our LQK handicap accessible park where people can come, they can get their ice cream, their sandwich, they can watch the planes come in and take off and land, and also enjoy the playground there. So more features coming to that playground over time, but I know this was done with rec funds specifically in Liberty because it's in the center, geographic center of the county, and we're excited about that and hope you'll all join us for that official dedication ceremony. Similarly, want to remind you all of our press conference on April 20th where we'll be announcing the Pickens Proud program. As you all have said to me, and as I've said to members of the public, and I've heard from members of the public, the litter situation in this county has never been worse. We can speculate on why, we can speculate on the causes of that, we can speculate on the solutions, but what we've done as a staff is we've spent several months now coming up with a series of initiatives that we're going to try. We're going to look at this from a comprehensive standpoint, from community service to community pickup endeavors, from law enforcement to folks that might be trying to go through PTI and need something to do to earn community service hours, to things that we're doing with abandoned structures, to how we're working in our recycling centers. This is going to be a comprehensive program where we're going to try to get our arms around all of the problem. If we recognize a problem and we just do something one day, we're not going to solve it. So the point of what we'll be announcing April 20th, and we invite the public to be here in this room, this is where it will be held, is that we're going to launch the Pickens Proud program, where we take a comprehensive approach to our litter program. We're excited about it. We hope you all attend. We hope members of the public will attend. Always enjoy it when Pickens County employees receive recognition on a statewide level. Recently, our own Steve Raines with the Solid Waste Department was at the 2022 Carolina Recycling Association's annual conference. At that conference, 3 individuals were recognized with statewide awards. One was the BMW Charity Program. I guess that's not an individual. The organization, the BMW Charity Program, was recognized. There was also a new energy biofuel person was recognized, but from a government employee, Steve Raines from Pickens County Solid Waste was recognized for our C&D Shredding to Sustainability program. So we know that the C&D program has made great strides in our landfill, but what we didn't know and what we now know is that on a statewide level, people are paying attention to that. So we're very proud of Steve, very proud of him getting that award, very proud of the fact that as we have turned the corner with our C&D waste, people have noticed, and we're excited about that award. He was selected by a committee of industry peers and scored on a variety of categories, including the amount of waste reduced, recycled, or diverted, the level of difficulty, which in our case, I imagine we scored really high on the level of difficulty, as you will all remember those problems, and contributions to the industry. So we're proud of Steve. I wanted to pass that on to you all. Speaking of C&D and brown goods updates, one thing we've discovered, and I'm still trying to get my arms around how we're going to respond to this, the C&D bins out in the satellite centers are designed for me and you, all of us, to take furniture, mattresses, small amount of construction, demolition, debris. But what we're increasingly seeing, and we're going to come up with a program to address this, is folks with trailers and numbers on their trucks pulling up and using our brown goods Now, that's fine. I'm glad that we're able to offer them that convenience, but if they're a commercial hauler, a commercial contractor that has been doing that work out in our county, they are supposed to bring that to the landfill and go over the scales. And we know that in many cases they aren't. It's a difficult thing to police, however, because most of these people are good local business people, and they might be remodeling their own home. But I just want to bring this issue up because we're looking at a couple of ways that we might be able to remind folks and perhaps enforce some of our ordinances if we have to address that. Because the C&D brown goods containers out there in the satellite centers, those are intended for me and you for our convenience. They're not intended for commercial use. So I just want to start by educating on that point. So look for more in that in addition to when we announce the Pickens Proud initiative. Another update I want to get you, and you may have seen some of this on social media, but our collaboration manager, Jessica Varney, through her work with the State Veterans Affairs Office, addressing and coordinating mental health efforts for our veterans and their families in this community, she's received some statewide recognition for that. But one of the things that she received as a part of that recognition was that she was honored as a hometown hero by Shaw Air Force Base. And the Shaw Air Force Base recognized 30 folks statewide that had made impacts to programs that helped service members and veterans. These included police officers, firefighters, nurses, teachers, and other citizens. She was recognized as a hometown hero for what she's done to help on our local level and on the statewide level. But of those 30 that were selected, 2 were actually allowed to go and fly in an F-16 with the Thunderbirds. And that picture on the upper right would be Jessica Varney inverted in an F-16. Now, I don't know whether I have to now fire her out of jealousy or what, but that is pretty incredible. That's her climbing into the plane, and yes, you can't see it, but they actually put her name on the plane. Yeah, maybe I can zoom in. Pretty neat honor to recognize someone, public servant in Pickens County, that got passionate about her work, and even if it wasn't on her job description, she was willing to go out there and try to make a difference in our community. So we're very proud of Jessica and what she did, and very, 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 very jealous of her. Moving on, this is a kind of an update, but it's also a request. Through some of our internal processes, we've discovered that we have started something that you all haven't voted on yet, but it's a misunderstanding that I think you will understand. You remember when we talked about ARPA money, and this council's #1 priority for ARPA funds was looking at addressing our radio problems in this county, our radio and dispatch issues, and you've identified that as our #1 priority. We all know that, and we all discussed it, and I went ahead and put out for bid a consultant to handle that. And through some internal mechanisms with our purchasing, we discovered we'd never actually got you to formally vote on that. So I would ask if you all would be willing to put that on the agenda for tonight so I can go ahead and execute that contract. Those folks are already at work, so I apologize for that misunderstanding. But thankfully we caught it, and we will get that authorizing vote from you all, I trust. Gentlemen, if you could add that to the agenda for tonight. Other than that, I don't know if you have any questions from public forum or otherwise.
Mr. Roper, I want to acknowledge the request of the speaker tonight, in particular with the EMS incident back in March from Clemson. Are you familiar with the process and the rules and all the things? It sounds like there could have been a lot involved there. Mm-hmm. And I know you can't speak to specifics without looking, but generalities. Can you acknowledge or address any of that?
Yes, I'm generally familiar, and I don't want to get into technical language that I may misstate, particularly to someone like yourself, Mr. Chairman, who is in the business, so I wouldn't want to embarrass myself. But I can tell you, I am familiar with the circumstances around Ms. Clayton's complaint, and I'll speak with Ms. Clayton as soon as we're done here tonight. Basically, what she is describing is what we would call a system status. When our supervisor calls system status, what that means is all trucks are busy. We don't have someone ready at hand. The system is flooded. So when a supervisor calls system status, we move from what would be our normal operating procedure, which would be to take you to the hospital of your choice within reason. You couldn't ask to go to the Mayo Clinic, a reasonable Greenville Hospital or Anderson Hospital, something like that we would normally take you to. But when we call system status, the system's too busy for that. And so what we do is we take you to the nearest hospital that can handle your issue. Without getting into the specifics of this complaint, because I don't want to in a public forum, that would not be appropriate. I can tell you that we were in system status when that happened. There was some misunderstanding or miscommunication from our folks because we obviously would not want to communicate to someone that our EMS was owned and operated by Prisma, because that's not true. Our EMS is owned and operated by the county, the taxpayers of this county. That being said, we do know that once, without getting into specifics, we did deliver the person to the local hospital under our system status, and then they were subsequently transported by a Prisma ambulance to a hospital in Greenville. So I'm glad that the care itself was received well. I want to make sure that we're communicating and there's no miscommunications there, so I'll talk to Ms. Clayton about that afterwards.
Specifically, I wanted to ensure that everyone knows that Pickens County EMS is operated by Pickens County, not by Prisma Health, not by Bond Scores, not by Mercy, not by Atrium, not by AMR, not by MedShore, not by, I can keep naming names if you want.
That's right.
It is operated by Pickens EMS, and nowhere in there do we say we work for one of those health systems.
That's right.
Okay, I just want to make sure that.
And it's important to point out, and I think you make a good point, but there's absolutely no financial incentive to us to select one hospital over the other. There might be a manpower issue that causes us to make that choice, but there's no other reason that we would do that.
Can I make a comment on that? Maybe we need to make sure that our employees understand this very clearly, because obviously she was under the impression that they told her that we were owned by Prisma, so that didn't just come out of thin air. I think they need to be able to have some methodology to explaining to the person, this is where we are, so I have to take you to the closest hospital. Because I think she never did get to Bon Secours, which is a different hospital system. So somehow she was in Prisma and Prisma took her there. Now that could have cost her a lot of money. The way our health system's set up, it's imperative that people go to the hospital inside their network. And our employees need to understand that they need to convey that. And I don't know if that's something we need to make sure that they understand that, or whoever was involved, so there's no misunderstanding where someone comes up here and says, you guys said this. I don't know.
So, Mr. Whitehurst, I can tell you that's my responsibility, and I'll make sure that's communicated. Thank you.
Vice Chairman.
I do have a question about the Alabaster House and the homeless shelter. I know that I'd spoken to our county attorney. Have you found out anything as far as what are the things that we as a council can do, and how do we begin this process? Because I've gotten multiple complaints now from different people saying the same thing that the folks here are saying, and I'm sure these guys have heard the same thing. What is it that we can do?
Well, the situation at the Alabaster House, I'm looking to be specific, okay? The question is, what can we do? The Alabaster House, we are doing that. For instance, I contacted DHEC, which has a facility for licensing, after Mr. Geiswhite spoke last month. I contacted them. I also contacted an attorney who was representing the Alabaster House to find out what his position is on what licensing they needed and so forth. DHEC was got right back with me by telephone, and there's a regulation that I already researched before I called, but it is it's a 60-page document, this regulation that is about standard for licensing facilities and who needs to be licensed and who does not. And there's a lot of exceptions and a lot of requirements, but basically those DHEC regulations apply to facilities that provide medical care for residential people, and their attorney's position is that Alabaster House does not do that, and therefore they're not subject to the licensing. I've asked DHEC for an opinion as to whether they were subject to the licensing, and they politely told me that we would need to file a complaint if we felt they didn't. However, a complaint may have already been filed. It did. And because the complaint was already filed, I said, we'll give you the results of the complaint. They said, give us 10 days, send a FOIA request, we'll send you the results of the complaint. I have not gotten that back yet. On the county level, we do not have a restriction against those types of facilities that I could find. Planning doesn't have, was unaware of any, but we do have code regulations that cover facilities that have people who stay overnight in residences, particularly if you have more than a certain number, which I believe that this facility is going to have. And speaking with their attorney, I informed him that we needed to make sure that it was code compliant with the codes that we do have, and that we were pursuing whether or not he had required licensing. And so at this point, I know the fire inspector has been out there and inspected it, and there is a different requirement on what the house must have based on the number of people that are in there. And so we believe at this point, and I just found out this today, that the requirement is such that it's going to have a sprinkler system. But that's still under investigation as to that. Also, the electrical needs to be in a certain situation. So the answer to the alabaster house is that there are code requirements that it's probably going to have, which would be upgraded from where they are. I believe, and that's not been determined yet. But the staff is working on that with both fire and the building codes. As far as the policy question, if the council were to desire to institute zoning in certain places, whether that is countywide or in certain locations, then certainly that's a policy decision that council would need to discuss at that point. And obviously, balance property rights with the rights of the community.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Councilman Wilson.
So the DSO basically says that you can't have a motor vehicle entertainment center within a mile of a house, which basically, since probably in the 70s, has precluded anybody competing with a racetrack. If we can do something like that, why can't we do something about a multi-housing unit like this, providing some sort of counseling or rehabilitation services? Make it be within a proximity of, police, or within proximity of the hospital, or some of the types of critical services folks like that would potentially need, or away from places where there are more than one home per whatever. That's not zoning, but that's certainly regulating.
It's regulating the use of the land, that's right. And you might not call it zoning, but you could call it restrictions on property use. Whether it's a shooting range or a facility that has a strip club, and those types of facilities are regulated. Some of those facilities, some of those types of facilities are regulated in our DSO. So yes, you can address it that way. But that is a policy decision that the question is, can you regulate it? Yes. With specific descriptions of what it is that you're regulating, number one.
Thank you, Les.
Any other questions for Mr. Roper or Mr. Hendricks? No?
Can I answer a question?
It's not really a forum to a town hall kind of setting. We allow that 3-minute time period per person at the beginning to ask questions, but you're more than welcome to reach out. I'm sure Mr. Roper would be more than happy to take any questions. Yeah. I'm sure if you just give your information before the end of the meeting to any of they'll be more than happy. Yeah. Moving on to item number 5 on tonight's agenda, we have the committee report. The Committee of the Whole met on Tuesday, the February 22nd, in the main conference room. Log number 142 was the discussion of the old jail. I made a motion to allocate funding totaling $98,000 towards this project at the old stockade. Councilman Whitehurst seconded the motion. The motion carried 5-1 with Councilman Seda opposed. No second is required as this comes from a recommendation from the committee. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Seda.
I want to explain why I voted no on this project coming out of committee. Basically, the aim here is to, and we talked about it tonight, is to have a shelter in Pickens for prison inmates who are released from the county prison. So in addition to having a building, for this to work, I think you need a couple essential elements that are really missing. One is the pastors that will run the program have to regain access to the jails so that they can get back into Sunday services and day-to-day mentoring of these inmates to actually build relationships with them so that when they get out of the jail and they go to the shelter, the relationships are there. There's some trust. The pastors no longer have access to the jail and won't likely get access for at least 2.5 years. And at that point, the current sheriff's term will end. Second, when these inmates are released and they go to the shelter, they're going to require lots of clinical intervention, whether it's therapy, drug rehab, alcohol counseling, how to get on government assistance, daily job training, jobs to go to, and transportation to get there. None of these services are available near the old jail. They have to be created from scratch. Partnerships have to be built and transportation provided. My question is, do the pastors proposing this program have the clinical training and the project management experience to actually do this in a comprehensive way? I didn't see that in the presentation. As the woman tonight mentioned, there was a lot of public support behind the homeless shelter in Pickens, and there's some benefit there too, but there were a lot of costs. Frankly, nobody saw coming, and I feel the same thing will happen here. In Pickens, we now have 60 to 80 people in that homeless shelter. A good 10 to 15 have been kicked out and now living on the streets or in the woods. They have a lack of counseling at the shelter, no drug rehab, no job training, no job placement for them in town or at the shelter. And what they do is they turn to the streets, and they're panhandling up in Ingalls, local gas stations. They're sleeping in the woods on benches. I mean, I run J.C. Park Trail, and I've come up on them. They're living there. That's sort of the problem. And I've actually had 2 women call me and said they were approached after dark by men loitering outside asking for money, and it's pretty scary for them. The organization lacks a board of directors, and city officials are questioning the transparency of the organization and the lack of oversight. So I think it was a mistake to put this homeless shelter in Pickens, for sure. And the reason I bring this up is this project here with the prisoners staying and creating this program, once they're released to stay at the old jail, it's a complex clinical problem that you're basically injecting into a community, and it's going to make the situation we have now much worse. The second reason is the old jail houses our roads and bridges department. There's a lot of equipment out there. There's no security there. Is anyone afraid that some of the former inmates may roam around and it may break the law again? I mean, I surely am. And then finally, it's about setting priorities. Sometimes you have to just say, we have too much on our plate right now, and I think we do as a county. This would be a new service for us. We talked about we have to get the centralized radio system. We've got to get 911 centralized. We've got to build an EMS station. We've got to clean up litter on the roads. I think adding this service when we're really falling behind on those primary services is not a good thing. So I would take care of first things first, and as a result, I'm going to vote no again tonight.
Well, I want to clarify, because I listened to what you said and listening to the speaker speak tonight. I think there's some miscommunication or misunderstanding out there. I did make the motion, so I want to clarify why I made the motion that I made in the committee. The $98,000, just to be clear about, is to bring that old stockade up to standard. Nothing about the $98,000 says we're going to do a deal or we're not going to do a deal. I hate Ms. Thompson left. I'm going to burn her ears again. She's not here. I use the example of what Ms. Thompson has done with Pickens Paul Partners. That's not a county program. They actually have tremendously helped the county in a lot of ways and continue to look for ways. I mean, they brought us money tonight to use towards our shelter. That's awesome. And I kind of see this program, if it's going to be successful, it has to be the exact same way. It's not a county program. I do agree that there's a lot of question about the operation, and those questions do have to be answered. Before we go into any agreement, or it would be a lease agreement situation is what we're talking about. We're not talking about the county running a shelter or the county running a program. It would be this group, this organization running the program. Before any of that could come to light, there's a lot of questions that still have to be answered. And we went over that in the committee meeting in great detail. It's not a shelter. They're not proposing a shelter. They're proposing I'm trying to use the word, remember the word, that they like to use, but it's a reentry, re-education program where you get those services that you're talking about, the counseling, the job preparation. In fact, before you graduate the program, you have a job. That means if you need your GED, you get your GED. They talked about if you start down a degree path, they help you with that. Those government assistance functions that you talked about, that's all part of their program. Now, the problem is they don't have that all on paper, and that's what we told them at the committee of the whole meeting. But as a good faith, we believe in your ideas. We believe that you got the parts. Now, you got to put the plan together, was the reason behind, okay, we'll bring our building, we're willing to allocate to bring our building up to snuff. Now you got to do your part and bring us what we're asking for. But again, it's not a shelter, and I've heard nothing, and I didn't support the Shelter of Hope when they opened it. I was against it, not because I'm against them or what they're doing or what the goal is, but I personally feel like we got to take care of women and children first, then families, and then everybody else, and that's Chris's priority. And that's the reason I voted against doing anything to help with it then. I get complaints every single week about the Shelter of Hope. I really do. I have a sister that lives not far from the Shelter of Hope, and I hear from her more than I hear from anybody else. And I don't even count her into the complaints that I get because it's just a common conversation I get from her. So I hear you 100% on that, but the proposal of the old stockade is not the Shelter of Hope. It is a program designed to keep folks out of jail and to get them on the right path. I do want to acknowledge getting back in the jail and building those relationships. We talked about in the committee, the whole meeting, how important that was for the success of the program. If they're not building those relationships, they have no program. You can't just catch them at the gate and say, hey, you want to ride? That's not going to work. No. So the spirit of the $98,000, I wanted to be clear on what the actual motion was and why it was. It's not a handout, yep, we're going to do this. It's we're willing to meet you. Now you got to show us exactly what we're going to do. And actually, Councilman Wilson brought up, we want to see the measurables of that. And if you want to continue doing business with the county, you got to bring us the measurables that go with that and show us that you're keeping folks out of jail. So I just want to be clear because I do think there's probably some confusion. We're not talking about opening a shelter. We're not talking about the county opening a shelter at all. We own the building where Pickens Paul Partners are. It's that kind of relationship, and that's the extent of that relationship, is we physically own the building. They run it, and if at any point they sever or we sever, it's a common lease agreement. Vice Chairman, I think you had your hand up.
And the only other thing I would add to that, I echo everything you say. We were basically saying we're allocation of the funds to get the jail to where it could be used. This doesn't mean that we're entering into any agreement with any individual or organization yet. I mean, it could be this organization comes and says we've got a plan, and we may get another organization that says they have a plan or that already has those agreements with the sheriff's office and can show us the quantitative and qualitative metrics as Councilman Wilson was talking about. So it truly is recognizing that we've got to put this on, I hate using the term earmark, but we've got to allocate these funds on the front end. But that doesn't mean that we're not entering into any agreement with any organization at this point.
I have a question.
Councilman Waters.
I think the homeless shelter in Pickens screams why we need to do this. The problem is that when the people are released from jail, they are literally left at the gate. Where are they going to go? They're going to end up in the homeless shelter, where they're going to be sleeping there at night and then wander around the streets in the day. And that's the problem, is these people come out of there. Some have homes to go to, some don't. The program's designed for those people that qualify, and this does require the building relationships in jail, which this pastor has done for 30 years in our jail. And the idea is to find those people that need that next step to get from jail back into using and being a useful part of society. The idea is to keep them out of the homeless shelter. There's the problem, is because there is no training in there. There's no job training. They've already got companies saying, we're ready to hire people. They're already figuring out the transportation. And even Inslee's come up with an idea for bringing up some transportation stuff. So there's ideas being bounced around, but the fact that we've got people walking around Pickens in the city of Pickens that are homeless, that screams for the purpose of this is to prevent that. Because if they don't have anywhere to go, that's where they're going to end up. with no training, no job, no nothing, and they can wander the streets and rob houses. And that's why this program is that opportunity for those that want to move out and be back into society. It's that step. And like I said, it may be these guys, it may be somebody else, but we've got a space that we can say, hey, this can work. We just find a program that can give us the results we're looking for.
Councilman Stater.
So are you saying that they don't stay overnight at the facility?
No, I didn't say that at all.
Okay.
I said Councilman Stater, please let me answer your question. I said that the program, they brought ideas, they've got to put it on paper. That's what I said.
Okay, so do they stay overnight at the facility?
Councilman Stater, there is no proposed program on paper at this moment. I cannot answer that question.
When you did your estimate, what did you put into the
they
building?
would be. They
Did
would
you
be
have
staying
overnight
overnight.
accommodation?
Yeah.
You don't know.
So we don't know if it's going to shelter them overnight or not.
I would foresee it, yes, sheltering overnight.
Okay, so that's why I called it a shelter, because that's the way I heard it.
But wait a minute. But
They would stay overnight there.
But that's not a shelter.
It's not a
Okay,
program.
just because someone spends the night someplace doesn't call it a shelter.
Either way, I think
Surely it's not a program.
It's not a homeless shelter because someone spends the night in
I
it.
didn't call it a homeless shelter. I called it a shelter. Behavioral health services is a program. Nobody stays there overnight. What you're proposing, what I heard from the pastors was they would stay there overnight, and I inferred that to be a shelter, something to shelter them, a roof over their head. That's why I called it a shelter.
It's a treatment facility. There's
Okay,
all kind of terms
but
you could use. But either way, we don't have a proposal on paper.
And that was another point. They
by
presented nothing on paper.
By allocating $98,000, we did not say we were going to spend a dime of it. It means we're setting aside $98,000 if there is a program developed.
Okay, I just wanted to make the point that they were staying overnight, that's all.
Councilman Finch.
I have lots of experience in this sort of thing. I helped Family Promise in Pickens County get started, and what we did was we picked one or two families to foster, I suppose would be the word for it, and those families go do a job during the day. They come to a church at night. They stay a week in a church. It's usually in Sunday school rooms or some other facility like that. And then the next week they go to another church. And the churches are able to do that, and it doesn't really cost them very much. And the people are selected so that they're not harmful to anybody. And I have so much experience with this sort of thing that I'm willing to help Reverend Moss in any way I can to get this started. And I know we can't just jump into a big thing all at once. It's going to have to be in steps.
Thank you, Councilman Finch. Any other discussion?
If you don't mind.
Councilman Wilson.
So they have an idea, but we have a problem. We don't get to pick our problems. We certainly get to pick where we focus our time as a government entity. These types of problems are solved best by non-governmental entities. You know, they can have the flexibility to pursue multiple lines of financing. They can work with different partners. They have a flexibility that, you know, we wouldn't have as a county government. Clearly, there are homeless folks. We're going through an economic instability period that seems to be increasing, and there will be more folks that are going to have instability in their access to food and to housing, and very likely, you know, an increase in, you know, criminality that you have when folks are hurting. A good friend of mine was a prison warden, and he had this sort of a speech that he'd given for years and years, and he said, "Welcome aboard," because he's an ex-Navy guy. "Welcome aboard. You just went from the prayer list to the poop list, and your behavior here is going to help you get off the poop list." A little bit more vulgar than that. The problem is when they transition to the front gate, from a mental perspective, they're still, you know, enduring whatever it was that they had to pay their time and their debt to society. Some folks won't come out to a family. Some folks won't come out to job skills because they didn't have them to begin with. Some folks won't come out of the prison or the jail with any capacity for independence. And so you get recidivism. The problem with incarceration in general is it's not just the cost to have somebody in the jail cell. You lose their income. So if it's 30 grand to have them in the jail cell, and on average they make about 15 bucks an hour, you just lost the impact on society of 30,000, plus society's paying for that 30. Generally speaking, these folks will have 1.2 or 1.3 kids, and then those kids will have increased costs associated with incarceration from counseling, issues at school. Then you have social programs that have to step in and deal with issues of poverty. So a person sitting in the jail cell for a year is really about $100,000 in societal costs. And then if they get back and they go back in, that's a revolving door that ends up being a cost on society. And if this is a conservative organization, then we ought to be focused on the things that save you money overall, not just regurgitating talk radio mumbo jumbo, but actually addressing a societal problem that has a huge and deep cost. So they didn't have a plan beyond an idea. They didn't have a lot of answers beyond the idea. What they asked us was to show an earnest willingness to partner with somebody that are going to have a direct effect on the types of folks that are going to be, to a certain degree, living a pointless life, and and to a certain degree, channeled down a road of going back and forth to jail. That's a huge societal cost. No person's worth throwing away. And all we said was, okay, you've got an idea. And what I asked personally, and this is the only reason that I would vote for it, is if you show me a long-term goal and a plan to get to dramatically decreasing the recidivism rate of the folks that participate. So if the sheriff's department puts people back on the street, and on average, because a lot of times it's drug, they have a standard recidivism rate that can be measured, and and it's volatile, right? It's going to change over time. Show us a plan on how over a 3-year period you cut that down, and over a 5-year period you cut that down, and for me the metric would be 80%. If you look at that, 80%. So if they can come back and tell us they'll keep that many people out of jail, and that comes down to 10 or 15 or 20 people a year, that's a couple of $1 million in impact on society that you and I are paying for already. I'd much rather pay a small upfront fee to partner with somebody that has multiple, that has the ability to be flexible and address this kind of an issue, knowing that it's going to be a problem, and it's always going to be a problem. You have to have some way to address it, than to just ignore it and pick and choose which problem we're going to solve, because nobody ever wins an election to the next level of office by trying to help out folks that are committing crimes. But I'd much rather prevent it than have to go to somebody's house and say, I apologize that we left these folks sitting out there on the street, no way to house themselves or feed themselves, and then they, to a certain degree led to them being a predator in the community. Which one do you want? So all they asked us to do was show earnest willingness to partner with them. If they come back with a plan that clearly will fail or won't lead to improvement in the recidivism rate, I won't vote for it. If they come back with a plan that won't have a negative impact on their area, that will be something that we could all be proud of, something to the degree of what Meals on Wheels has done, which is address a real problem at a much lower cost than the government could do it and a higher success rate than the government can do it, I can vote for that. Clearly with some planning and some things other than just dropping it down in the middle of some neighborhood somewhere, right, so that people have to deal with it, which is unfair to the folks that participate in the program. If you go from being in jail and being isolated from society, and all of a sudden you're out in the middle of the sticks somewhere, it's a 15, 20-mile walk to anywhere you need to be or want to be, or to no jobs, all that type of stuff, your program's going to fail. So they got to give us how they're going to transport people, how they're going to house people, how they're going to keep people behaving, how they're going to reach out to them for all the issues they have, how they get them, all these different programs. We're just at the talking level. But we know we have a problem. And we don't get to pick to ignore problems that just don't fit into our political whatever plans. We have that problem not just for the folks that are going to be out there on the streets, but also for the folks who are going to be dealing with them, like going to parks and walking out of the grocery store. There are homeless people. It's a true thing. It's a true fact of nature. And criminals, when they come out of prison, have a high potential for becoming homeless. So it's something we can't ignore. We can't just pick and choose. We don't get to pick and choose. We're the government. We have to help these folks either by partnering with somebody or doing it directly. And the much less expensive way and the most direct way to do it is through a partnership with an entity like this. And if these guys don't come back with a good plan, hopefully someone else would, like the ladies from Delta. This is a program that fits right into their metric there, right? There's an outreach opportunity associated with that fits right into their plan. There's tons of folks out there. We just can't say no at the gate every single time. Because people will just remain homeless and indigent and going back to jail. These guys will have return customers on a constant basis at the Sheriff's Department. That's why I would vote for it. That's how I'd vote for it. That's what I have in line for it. I think that falls in line with everybody up here that would like to solve problems.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Thank you. Log number 192, 2030 Comprehensive Plan referral by council to the Pickens County Planning Commission for further public input and recommendation. No action was taken by the committee. Log number 123, discussion of ordinance number 572, amending Article 1 of Chapter 34 of the Pickens County Code of Ordinances, says to approve remedies and penalties for illegal litter and dumping in the unincorporated areas of Pickens County and matters related thereto. There was no action taken by the committee. Log number 172, budget work session. There was no action taken by the committee. And that is the end of the committee of the whole report. Item 6 on tonight's agenda is council correspondence. This is a time to share known things coming up. So non-essential county offices will be closed on February the 15th in observance of Good Friday. The committee of the whole meeting will be Monday, April 18th at 6 o'clock in the main conference room here in the admin building. The next council meeting will be May 2nd at 6:30 here in council chambers. Also April 12th, I want to remind you of the park grand opening down at the airport, LQK. And then April, that was the 12th, and the 20th will be the Pickens Proud Program Press Conference, and that'll be here at the admin building. Any other correspondence that need to be shared? Hearing none, that takes us to item 7 on tonight's agenda, motion period new business. Are there anyone have a motion or any new business?
Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chairman.
Excuse me, I have a couple of things. One, I'd like to add to consent agenda. I've had a group of folks come speak to me about wanting to speak with full council about naming of the LEC. The other, I'd like to add to consent agenda. Do you want to do them one at a time or all of them?
I have a motion that we add
naming of the LEC.
Naming of the LEC to consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Hear none. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Thank you.
I'd like to add to the consent agenda a regulatory discussion on property use specific to shelters.
I have a motion that we add to the consent agenda regulatory
discussion of property use.
Do I have a second?
Shelter.
So moved.
Any discussion?
I'd like to amend that to include regulatory use of
in general
of property.
Okay.
To take the shelter piece out of it.
Okay, that's fine. I'll withdraw that.
I've gotten lots of feedback about different areas in the DSO.
Okay, I have an amendment. Do I have a second to the amendment?
Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand. No. On the original as amended. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Okay. Thank you.
I have one more thing. I'd like to add to executive session contractual discussion regarding economic development.
So I have a motion that we add to tonight's executive session contractual regarding economic development. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That's unanimous, so we can add that tonight. Councilman Whitehurst?
Are you going to do them? You have another motion?
No, that was it. That was just,
add a motion, add to agenda tonight the vote for the program that we've had for our 911 that we put out to bid.
Oh, yeah.
So I wasn't sure that you were waiting for you to get to that, and I saw him over here panicking.
Add radio system to tonight's agenda. Is that the best way to do that?
Radio system and dispatch center for the consultant's work.
All right, do I have a second to add radio system and dispatch to tonight's agenda?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That's unanimous. We can add that tonight. Thank you, gentlemen. Any other new business or motions? All right. I think I got it all. Item number 8 on tonight's agenda is presentation of annual update by Appalachian Council of Governments.
Thank you, Chairman Bowers, members of council. My name's Steve Pellissier. I'm the director with Appalachian Council of Governments, and I'm here again this evening to provide a very brief annual report on services from the Council of Governments to citizens of Pickens County. I want to start off by thanking Mr. Costner and Mr. Feimster for serving on our board of directors. I realize y'all probably have enough to do with your county council and your other activities, and appreciate you making the commitment to serve us as well. Other board members of the Council of Governments from Pickens County include Representative Neil Collins, the Mayor of Pickens, Fletcher Perry, Clemson Mayor Robert Halfacre, and Ms. Thompson, who was here a little earlier this evening. We've enjoyed our partnership in working with Pickens County for about 55 years now. And prior to the meeting, appreciate Ms. Nation's help, distributed a copy of the annual report, and I put in a Pickens County insert into the cover of that. The good news is I'm not going to read it to you tonight, and we'll just go over some of the highlights. So I do ask in your spare time if you could take a look through that. And I think a good way to talk about performance is return on investment. Last year, Pickens County invested $61,631 into the Council of Governments. The return to the county through our programs to the county, municipalities, individuals, and other groups in the county was $7.75 million. The largest of that was through our Rural Transportation System Enhancement Program, finishing up the 178, 135 interchange program, and then doing the repaving project on Highway 178. Worked with local governments in the county to secure $1.5 million in community development block grants. That's $750,000 each to the City of Pickens and the City of Central Pickens for the Rosamond Water System Improvement and Central for a water line extension. Also worked with the City of Pickens on the Allgood Water Improvement Program. It helped them obtain $500,000 from the Rural Infrastructure Administration. In addition, provided $969,000 in services to seniors. And this is a program, the purpose of which is to keep seniors in their homes. They do better, and as taxpayers, we do better. Obviously, people want to be with their family, with their neighbors, and place the community that they know and love, rather than an institution or a long-term care facility. We like that for them too, and it saves taxpayers money to provide funding for maybe food or a minor home rehab or transportation, as opposed to going into a facility. Provided over 55,000 meals. In past years, that's been spread between congregate dining and home delivered. We actually just started the congregate dining again coming out of the COVID, so primarily home delivered the last couple of years. $79,000 in caregiver services. That is, if you are taking care of an elderly loved one in your home, we have a grant program for you to help with those expenses you might have or respite you might have. And also other in-home services and in-home health services, as well as non-emergency medical transportation. If somebody needs to go to physical therapy or follow-up doctor's appointments after coming out of a hospital, we can provide funding for that as well. Another area that we provided funding in the county through our partners with WorkLink, $571,000 in workforce development. Coming out of the COVID, or going into the COVID, both had a lot of folks who all of a sudden found themselves in an unfortunate situation employment-wise. Now, as we're coming out, our clients are more businesses than individuals, helping businesses to find and to train people to meet their openings, to give them the skills to make them qualified for the openings that our businesses here in Pickens County absolutely need. $160,000 went to gap financing in our small business and entrepreneurial revolving loan program. You're a small business person, you have an idea to start a business or expand a business. You have some money of your own, you could go to a bank, get some, but there's a gap. Our purpose is to fill in that gap, create jobs. And I think what's cool about that is, there's so much emphasis on the big, the multi-million-dollar investors who hire hundreds, thousands of people. But statistics show over half of job creation comes from the little guy, the very small businesses. One of the few programs that targets that. We're able to fund the DSN board $55,000 for a handicapped accessible van. In addition, I mentioned the $4 million currently. Over the past 20 years, we've been able to invest over $20 million in transportation in Pickens County. In addition to the new grants we got this year, we're still administering $6.2 million in grants over the past, that we've received over the past few years with the towns of Central, Clemson, Liberty, and Pickens. In addition to the financial gain to the county, we provide other services as well in the aging area. In addition to the programs I mentioned, provide benefits counseling. If you are an elderly person or have a loved one who is and have a need, we can help get that person qualified for the federal state benefits they're entitled to, make those resources for those benefits, get those to them. Also do insurance counseling, Medicare insurance counseling, and long-term care facility ombudsman services. We undertook 30 investigations of nursing home, long-term care facility abuse in Pickens County over the past year. Other areas, government services. We've worked with a lot of your municipalities. In fact, we're serving as the interim administrator in Liberty right now. I'm sorry, not right now. When they had their transition, we helped with that search, served as the interim, and now working with the new administrator there. With Clemson, we helped with the search for the assistant administrator, helped easily with their administrative search, and Pickens with their recreation director search. We're working with a lot of municipalities on the ARPA funding, developing procedures and regulations to make sure they use it right, to get the best priorities, to get the best bang for return on that. And do general technical assistance working with 5 of your municipalities. In the area of planning, we're currently serving as a zoning administrator for 3 municipalities, providing technical assistance to 4. As you all are familiar with, by the end of this week, we'll be submitting to your planning commission the draft plan for the Cherokee Foothills planning process. I understand that'll go to the Planning Commission on the 18th of April, and then ultimately to you as council. Economic development, we work with Ray Farley and the folks over there on the what we call Infominum system, which is the database and geographic mapping system they use to market the county to provide information that folks who want to invest money in you provide. In response to those, and I think that's the highlights, but again, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening and ask that you look at the report when you get a chance, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question, actually.
Mr. Saban.
You mentioned $4 million allocated to resurfacing a section of US 178. Did you say?
That finishes up the intersection project that had been going on for prior to the year, and then the resurfacing for the.
And where is that located at?
The entire project ultimately will go from the Anderson County line to Pickens. As to the last 12 months, I'm really not sure offhand.
Okay, so you say they're going to repay from the Anderson line to Pickens?
Yes, sir, ultimately.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wilson.
So the last time that you were here, you got beat up a little bit. Folks wanted to hear about the return on investment, what you guys do for the amount of money that we give y'all, et cetera. The response to that was we let Ray choose how we allocated his funding, and he elected to give you guys funding again. And one of the things I would want to say to you is thank you, for what you did here. Clearly, you took away a message from us that we were just, we need to report to folks how the money is spent, the impact associated with it. I just want to point out one thing on here, just one small line. You helped almost 3% of our population just fill out and get approval for what they basically are qualified for as being citizens of the country, right? For their Medicare enrollment. 3% of the population, that's huge. That's very impactful. That's not something that comes through when people are raising cane at us because you guys didn't help us find a manufacturer with 5,000 jobs. There's a huge amount of impact you have here, and I appreciate the way you documented it. Thank you so much for doing it this way.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, I appreciate it.
I actually wanted to say, I commend, I didn't realize the respite care service and then the plugging in the consulting, if you will, but I had a friend that recently had I'm in healthcare, and I had a friend that recently had a major issue in his family, and I reached out to a case manager friend of mine and said, hey, need some help for this guy, and the first thing she said was, where does he live? And I told her, and she says, call ACOG. They will point him in the right direction, and they were able to give him some very valuable resources. So I didn't even realize that was part of it, but thank you.
Sure, thank you, and I'll pass that on to the folks who deal with that at my office and let them know your appreciation.
Thank you. Anything else, gentlemen?
I think the debate was about Upstate Alliance, wasn't it?
Is it? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I got it.
Because I don't know, what is the...
Well, when I was here a year ago, yeah, we caught some too.
You did? Okay. I couldn't remember.
They might have.
What is the fee that we pay you a year?
63,000.
It's very close to the same as Upstate Alliance.
Is it?
It's almost
It's on the sheet of paper.
61,630.
I get it, I see it now. Yeah. All right.
So in all fairness, anybody that we pay money to, we expect to see a return on investment, and it laid out like that. I think that's the point you were making, is it was really laid out where a dollar goes.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I haven't been to sleep in 2 days, so I probably made a mistake there. But to be blunt, I think we probably should send this over to the Upstate Alliance folks, if that's what I'm meant to be talking about.
That's a good
And tell those folks this is exactly what we're looking for in one page. Nice job.
Thanks,
nice
sir.
job. Yep. Brevity is clarity.
Yep, thank you. Thank you. Moving on to item number 9 on tonight's agenda is first reading in title only of an ordinance to provide for adoption of a budget amendment containing the estimates of revenue and expenditure changes for Pickens County for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 21 and ending June 30th, 22. I ask for a motion and a second to constitute first reading in title only of this ordinance.
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Fincher. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chairman Costner. Discussion.
I have a question.
Mr. Sada.
So this is an amendment about the budget this year that we're in now. Do we have any literature on it, or would we be given anything?
Not yet. What would traditionally happen is, because we're in this budget cycle right now, as we move into another month or two down the road, we'll start having a document that comes together for you. This is just the beginning of that conversation. So this is the way we introduce it. Revenues and expenses, are still ongoing. The calculation of those is still ongoing. So this is a cleanup provision in our budget.
There will be 3 readings total before anything is official and passes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is like a pet peeve of mine, and I want to explain why I'm going to vote no on this. Something as significant as a budget amendment or next year's budget, I think you should have 3 legitimate readings. And the purpose of the 3 reading rule is that you have something you present to the public they can look at, they digest it, they come forward, they speak, you get the input. There's another vote. So as it goes, then you have more, you give the public more. If your first reading is a blank page, it kind of short circuits the process because they don't really know what you're trying to do, the direction you're going. So I don't know what the amendment is. I'm not going to vote for something I haven't seen. It's probably innocuous. But it's generally what we do a lot of times. We'll just read title only and we're raising our hands. And I just don't feel comfortable about, approving a blank piece of paper for 2 reasons. One, I don't have an understanding of what it is and the direction of it. And the second thing is I don't think the public gets to see it, and they have to be able to see it to comment on it. So the first reading really isn't a legitimate reading in my opinion. So I'm going to vote no.
Councilman Whitehurst.
Maybe some misunderstanding what this is. This is for last year's budget. We've already voted for every one of the changes we're looking at here. Everything we do to that budget last year, if we change something, we vote on all that spending. This is the cleanup, correct me if I'm wrong. This is the cleanup of all that at the end of the year to make sure that it balances exactly like it's supposed to, so that our votes, we don't change the budget every single moment and have to do 3 readings of the budget. We do 1 amendment at the end of the year that cleans up all the votes we had during the course of the year. In other words, if we had emergency, we had to allocate funds here or take it out of reserves or something like that. Those type of things, or with a storm where we had to take more money out because we had more storm damage than anticipated. Am I correct on this kind of? Just explain exactly so the public understands this is not a a shell game.
Yeah, there's kind of two things going on here, and so I don't want to be obtuse about this. I want to be straightforward about this. One is the way actions happen in this body, the way you introduce an ordinance. And when it's in title only, and the rules allow that it be in title only, that's the way that you introduce something. So in the General Assembly, for example, the first time you read something across a desk, it literally gets read across the desk. It's just the parliamentary reading of it to initiate a legislative action. Now, that having been said, to your point, if we went ahead and nailed down that language now, we would run the risk of needing to do it again in another 6 or 8 weeks. You see, so what we do is we try to get it in, the process started, and then as Ralph is, I shouldn't say Ralph, as the finance department, he's got several people that work for him, is finalizing those numbers where the estimates of revenues or the estimates of expenses are not exactly what we had estimated a year ago, then we're able to get that on paper and get it to you, and it closes out our budget year so that it's clear to the public. And I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Seda, because you're exactly right insofar as we need the public to know exactly what we did. So there is a little bit of delaying it right now so that we can have the most complete data.
Yeah, so is his point true that there's no new information in here at all?
There won't be any information in that budget amendment that y'all haven't already voted on. So if you voted to, I'm going to make something up, it might not be exactly the right situation. Let's say that you decided you're going to spend $500,000 to buy a new piece of equipment that wasn't in the budget. You had to vote to do that, or I didn't have the authority to do it, right?
Yes.
So you had to vote to do it, and so at the end of the year, we clean that up so we show that it is a part of the whole budget.
So since it's already known, why don't you just give us a summary of that now?
Well, because it's still happening. Like, we're still having estimates
we'll
of...
change it, it's a draft. I mean, like I said, the school board, we always had something that, that was there.
So
it just changes.
Vice Chairman Costner.
The only thing I'll say, I mean, I agree, it always feels funny to me doing things for first reading title only. However, this is our way to say we're beginning the process. We're starting here rather than just plop down and all of a sudden we've got everything, let's get it out to everybody. No, we're starting the process. So the only reason it's first reading title only because we don't have all the data yet, other than to Councilman Whitehurst's point of the things that we voted on. It is frustrating that we don't see. But to me, a budget is a plan. It is not a checkbook, and the county has never really perceived it as a checkbook. We got to go spend all the money we got in each of these accounts. We're looking to be as frugal as we can be. So that's kind of how I look at it.
And you may bring in more money than you anticipated, and you're not going to know that. You may end up fuel costs going up. You may end up spending more in fuel, and you'll come back and say that we need to spend X more in fuel, whatever. I understand your point, but I think for the spirit of it, this is, to your point, Vice Chairman, it's kind of the advertisement of, hey, we are going through this process. That should grab your attention. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Thank you. Item number 10 on tonight's agenda, first reading in title only of ordinance to provide for levy of taxes in Pickens County for ordinary county purposes for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022 and ending June 30th, 2023, and to direct expenditures thereof. I ask for a motion and a second to constitute first reading in title only of this ordinance.
Motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Finster. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second by Councilman Wilson. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in Mr. Roper?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will say that there's a statutorily required statement I have to make at this time, so it's included as a transmittal letter, and if y'all apologize, I apologize to you all for reading, but in a sense, this is going to address in broad strokes some of Mr. Seda's concern. So if I could have just a moment or so, please. Mr. Chairman. The budget you have in front of you is provided to you in accordance with Section 4-9-640 of the South Carolina Code of Laws, which provides that the county administrator shall prepare the proposed operating and capital budgets and submit them to the council at such time as the council determines. At the time of submitting the proposed budget, the county administrator shall submit to the council a statement describing the important features of the proposed budget. Previous action of council set April 4th today as the date of first reading of the required 3 readings by County Council of an ordinance enacting the budget. Traditionally, the first reading is in title only, with second and third readings following at a later date after as many budget work sessions as the council deems in its sole discretion to be needed. When staff began formulating this budget, we were informed and guided by County Council's stated goals. These goals are to provide efficient essential services, protect and enhance our unique nature, promote a culture of public service, deliver prompt and efficient emergency response, and strengthen our resilient local economy. All county departments were instructed to submit their various budget requests on or before January 31st of this year. This year, county finance officials and I met with division heads and officials to review their requests, and we met with them individually, asking for justification or explanations on a budget line by budget line basis. After those meetings occurred and we came up with a draft budget, a staff draft, the finance director and I then went back through each department, line item by line item, to make sure that we were responding to needs and also meeting with the goals of council. Please note that 6 additional staff positions have been added in the general fund budget out of more than 40 requested positions from departments for additional county employees. We discussed some of those, I would say as an aside, the other night during our budget work session, you'll recall. The proposed budget also discontinues the fire fee schedule and replaces it with a millage-based tax. This will necessitate that council consider and adopt a companion ordinance specific to the creation of a countywide fire district. I recommend first reading in title only of such an ordinance at your regular May meeting. The change addresses the need for equitable fire services throughout the county, a process that started with council's 2020 goal to advance a unified emergency service. It further supports the directives from the South Carolina Supreme Court that we heard and this council heard fully to move away from fees in the place of a more transparent tax, as the council did with the road user fee some months ago. Based on the results of the constitutionally mandated decennial census, Pickens County has now passed the population threshold that requires the creation of a master in equity position as well as a secretarial position in support of that judicial office. Accordingly, those are 2 positions that I've already outlined are included in this budget. We have continued execution of our 5-year capital plan, including a dedication of a specific millage to partially offset the expenses of that year's needed capital purchases. The balance of capital expenses are drawn from proceeds from the sale of capital assets and continuing with our plan of using the amount not addressed by the dedicated millage to come from fund balance. The budget specifically specifies that all proceeds from the road maintenance fund be used exclusively on paving and related expenses to our county road system. I want to reassure the public about that. And funds in the road reserve fund are specified for long-term projects as needed to improve the long-standing county road conditions. It also provides for continued operation of our parks, our tourism efforts, our support structures, as well as our economic development initiatives. I am confident that staff's proposed 23 budget balances the needs of our county as we recover from the 2-year COVID-19 pandemic, and it also keeps in mind the well-being of the county government workers and its citizens. Accordingly, we have endeavored to make this budget transparent and easily understood, reflecting the current budget with only minimum changes. I'd like to thank Ralph Garino and Jody Laws with our finance department for their hard work during this entire process. And I also want to commend the various department heads and the elected officials who met with me individually for their cooperative attitudes and openness to dialogue as we develop this budget. Mr. Chairman, that's a state-mandated overview of the budget that I am required to give. Hope it gives you some indication of what you're finding here in the staff budget.
Thank you, Mr. Roper. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Thank you. Item number 11 on tonight's agenda. First reading in title only of an ordinance authorizing the advance of funds from the general fund of Pickens County to the Pickens County Airport to Enterprise Fund, providing for the repayment of said general funds by revenues and/or grant funding from other sources and matters related thereto. I ask for a motion and a second to constitute first reading and title only of this motion.
Motion.
Motion by Vice Chairman Costner. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Wilson. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Saylor.
Reading the handout that you gave us, it looks like there's 7 projects. Is that right? For 8.6 million?
That's right. It's 7 different components of that project as
Okay.
we were kind of breaking it
And
out.
it's about 5 million is going to come from the federal government, 2.1 from the state.
That's right.
And 1.6 million from the county?
That's correct.
Okay. Has the state and the federal government approved their share yet, or we're just?
They have not. What we're going to want to do as we work through the readings of this is also talk to you about the triggers for that funding, and then for you all to make decisions. The document you have in front of you, again, this sounds like I'm addressing your first concern. I'm not. You're from the previous.
No, this one actually has someone.
Yeah, it does. No, exactly. That's what I'm kind of laughing at, because this one seems to fit with what you're saying. But I will tell you that document you have in front of you is something that we need to go to the Committee of the Whole, and I would ask for y'all to send that to the Committee of the Whole, because we're going to need to look at that. There's some assumptions in that document. For example, do you want the money you've already allocated that the State Aeronautics Commission matched? You'll remember when Skeets Cooper came a few months back to do the planning, the engineering work for this runway. Do you want that to be included in the advance, or do you want that to not be included? Do you want to charge interest to the airport for this loan, or do you not? These are things that I want you all to talk about, so we're going to need it to go to the Committee of the Whole.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Is it heading to the Committee of the Whole now?
It's on the consent agenda.
Okay, what's that? Okay.
Right? Is it on the consent? Is it on? It's not on the consent.
As I misunderstood the question, I don't believe this is on the CAL, so if you would send it, I would be appreciative.
You want to make a motion to
Can we
amend?
amend the motion to send it to committee after vote?
I have a motion to amend.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor as to add the amendment, signify by raising your hand. All right, any discussion on the motion at hand as amended? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Item number 12 on tonight's agenda is first reading and title only of an ordinance to develop a jointly owned and operated industrial business park in conjunction with Oconee County. Such industrial business park to be geographically located in Oconee County and established pursuant to Section 4-1-170 of the Code of Laws of South Carolina, 1976, as amended, to provide for a written agreement with Oconee County to provide for the expenses of the park, the percentage of revenue application, and the distribution of fees in lieu of ad valorem taxation, and other matters related thereto. This is known as Project Queso. So I have a motion and a second for Project Queso.
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Feimster. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Whitehurst. Any discussion?
You understand, everyone understand what this is? Oconee County's doing a project. We're part of a joint group with them. Doesn't cost us anything. We'll get a little money out of it in the end. That's the way it works. We won't actually see any details on it. They do the same thing with us.
Do they name all of their economic development projects after cheese?
All right. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Brings us to item 13 on tonight's agenda. Public hearing and second reading of ordinance for a referendum regarding Sunday alcohol sales in Pickens County. I open this up to a public hearing for referendum regarding Sunday alcohol sales in Pickens County. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Hearing no one, I close public forum. This time I ask for a motion and a second regarding an ordinance for referendum on Sunday alcohol sales in Pickens County. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Councilman Feimster. Do I? You should. Sir, I just opened up public forum and you didn't speak.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Wilson.
There's a motion to reopen, let the man have his opportunity to speak.
I have a motion to reopen public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, second by Councilman Saylor. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. I reopen public hearing, public forum regarding Sunday alcohol sales. If you would, you feel free to step to the podium and speak. Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
I prefer not to sell it on Sunday. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Don't we need his name?
Yeah, let me get your name, please, sir.
Doug Stokes.
Doug Stokes. Mr. Stokes. Thank you, Mr. Stokes. Any further comment or discussion?
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry, you public forum.
Anyone else? All right, close public forum. I ask for a motion and a second. I have a motion from Councilman Feimster. Do I have a second? Second by Councilman Whitehurst. Now, any discussion amongst council?
I have a question about the question.
Yes, sir.
I've always wondered about this because I saw it in the city of Pickens. This is really for Ken. The consumption of alcohol liquors, that's the first one for liquor, right? The second one is for beer and wine, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why does it just say 24-hour permit? Because they're allowed to sell it all year long. Well, how does that work?
It's the way it's set up, and if you look at the actions in the statutes with you, so you can see it, but it's set up for to have a time a permit regardless of what day it is. That's how they set it. Rather than saying you can have this on Sunday, it says you can have a permit, but you can have it on any day.
Well, why is it 20? Why don't do they buy 365 permits a year? Is that how it works?
They do, but there's a provision that they buy a year.
So okay, so even though it says it's really 20, it says 24 hours, but they buy 365 of them.
Well, 52.
Well, in the case of Sunday, but what about all year?
Well, I guess you could buy them for 365, but you could buy a
Too many.
So if I'm not mistaken, and you can clarify, because one of the
I don't
digging
understand
I
why it
did
says 24.
was if you have your beer and liquor license already, if you want to sell on Sunday, you buy a separate license just for Sunday.
That's right.
Oh, okay. Okay,
right.
so you have a 6-day annual license.
That's right. You would buy the license that your yearly license, and then you would buy one for Sunday.
Okay, and then you would just renew it. You'd buy 52 of them. Okay, I never understood that. Thank you.
And
That was
I
helpful.
was reading in the Department of Revenue regulations that they do allow, which regulates it, the Department of Revenue does, they do allow you to purchase a year permit for each week.
Gotcha.
You can pay one fee.
That's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
And I will also note, and I've provided it to the council, that those questions are not questions that I came up with or the council comes up with. That is the statutory question that you can ask in the referendum. So it is specifically A and B. It's specifically, and I put them in quote marks, what it is that you put on the ballot.
So this is basically the copy that has been used throughout the state on how to get this referendum done. And this is the state's basically, here's your outline of the way you do this according to our rules and our regulations.
Yes, sir.
And that if you're going to do it, you have to do it this way.
That's right. You may have a referendum to allow the citizens to decide this question, is what the legislature has allowed the counties or municipalities. You may have a referendum. This is how you do it. This is the question you can ask.
This is the only way you can do it.
Well, that's right. These are the only questions you can ask, not to do it by citizens petition to get it about. But council, either of municipalities or counties, can put these two questions on the ballot.
Okay. And all this other stuff is just the behind the scenes stuff behind it that we need to read through to understand
Yes, sir.
how the state's gonna make money.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Any other discussion, any other questions?
As far as timing, the license doesn't have to be for the full 24 hours. It could be, say, from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. or something like that.
As far as I know, yes, sir, and it also could be for 6 months out of the year. You don't have to do the full year.
That's correct.
Vice Chairman Custer.
So I want to make something really clear. We're not voting to allow Sunday alcohol sales when we vote. We're voting, and I'm going to explain why I'm going to vote the way I'm going to vote. I think that the federal government and sometimes the state and sometimes local government gets too much in the business of telling people what they can and can't do. which is why I'm really proud with this council, how we handled the pandemic and as we got through that. I think it's important that for something like this to let the people decide. I don't think my opinion should matter. I personally, be like Mr. Stokes, I'm going to vote against it when it comes to the referendum. But to allow the public to vote, I think we should be allowing people to voice their opinion, and this gives everybody in my district that I represent the opportunity to do that.
Any other discussion?
No mind.
Councilman Wilson.
So what I think you just said, Roy, and I think I agree with you. We're voting to let folks have their voice. So, this is a decision that impacts a lot of different folks. There are a lot of people like the gentleman here that are concerned about alcohol sales, and we've seen that, a number of times this year. We basically voted to approve a questionnaire and some stipulations to be able to use government facility. It wasn't illegal. We just basically put a process in place for people to request it, and some folks were really concerned about it. What it boils down to for me is I'm not going to stand in the way of folks' ability to go into the ballot box and have a voice about different decisions, particularly stuff like this. If voting against it basically says, that we stand against you guys, I think that people make good decisions when they vote and can educate themselves on this particular issue and express their voice. I wish there were other items that we were able to let the folks decide through referendum. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Thank you. 13A is what I'm going to call it. Was added unanimously to tonight's agenda would be radios and dispatch. Mr. Roper, you needed some clear direction from dispatch.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if you could, please, vote to direct me to continue through with that process with the consultant and to pay the bills. I would estimate that the grand total of all of that consulting work would be $60,000. If you would set a budget for that to come from ARPA funds, I think that would take care of what we're going to get back on the radio system, the recommendations of that, an estimate of cost, also recommendations on the most efficient way for us to do dispatch center, and an estimate of cost on that as well.
I'll make the motion that we instruct Mr. Roper to continue with his consulting and allocate $60K from ARPA funds for that project.
Second.
A second by Vice Chairman. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Move to item 14 on tonight's agenda. That's the consent agenda. First off, we have consideration of resolution number 2022-05 recognizing April 10th through April 16th as National Telecommunications Week. Consideration of resolution number 2206 designating April 2022 as Fair Housing Awareness Month in Pickens County. Consideration of resolution number 2022-07 recognizing the Samaritan Health Clinic for their 30 years of service to Pickens County. We had added unanimously tonight to add renaming of the LEC, and then we also had unanimously tonight to add regulatory discussion over use of property. Do I have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Feimster. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Wilson. Any discussion? Hearing none, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. Moving to item number 15 on tonight's agenda, that will be executive session. I ask for a motion and a second that we go into executive session for boards and commissions to review applications, a legal update for textile mill rehabilitations, and then as added unanimously tonight, contractual obligation regarding economic development. Do I have a motion and a second that we go to executive session for these matters and these matters only?
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Feimster. Do I have a second? Second by Councilman Wilson. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll adjourn to executive session after a brief recess.
Ralph got mad at me about my explanation. Hey, Steve, thank you. Well done. Appreciate you. Appreciate you.